But instead I figured, okay, well, I've been on this trajectory of talking about the 7 factors, well, on the Satipatthana Sutta, so the 4 foundations of mindfulness, right? And we've kind of moved through the 4 foundations, and we'll do some more of that tonight as a practice, more experiential. And then obviously you know that hopefully you know that these talks are also going to be recorded. Pretty much all of us are being recorded and then posted on YouTube. And sometimes it takes about a week or so for them to show up on YouTube. So please continue to check there. But it's nice to have you here in person, or at least live via Zoom, and those of you in the room. It's nice to have a little company in this time. All right. So we're going to sit for a time, and yeah, I'm not totally sure what I'm going to talk about, but I think it'll be something along the lines of the 4th foundation of mindfulness, which is pretty much all of the teachings of the Buddha. And we'll I might narrow it down a little bit, so we'll go there when we get there. All right, so let's go ahead and start. We'll just sit for a period of time. Let me move some things here. All right. So finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable. You want to feel relaxed and alert. And really, we're going to kind of work with this 4th foundation, 3rd and 4th foundation of mindfulness. But as a way to get there, we can't not involve the first 2 or all of the foundations of mindfulness, because really it's not a linear, it's not a line, it's not a linear way of understanding. It's really a systemic way of understanding. So we're going to work with that a bit. So it's helpful if you allow the eyes to close, although if you don't feel comfortable with your eyes closed, you can allow them to be downcast. Opening to the comings and goings of sound. Perhaps sounds in the room. Sounds outside the room. And so allowing sound to both be a part of this present time experience. And if we can, we actually can, invite sound to be in the background of our attention. As we perhaps aim the attention more specifically towards this sitting, breathing body. Perhaps just checking in with the physical form. What's happening here in this body? connecting with the sensations, the different, even feeling tones here within this body. It's all very simple. Relax, observe, allow. Relaxing into each new breath. Observing what arises in the heart, in the mind, in the sense doors of smelling and seeing, hearing, and touch or sensation, taste, whatever is available. Whatever can be experienced here. And then allow whatever's arising to stay for a time and pass away, as all things do. Relax, observe, allow. Of course, the attention may be carried off. A thought or a sound or a sensation may turn into some kind of a thought train. It's okay. Whenever we recognize that this has happened with a sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, just aiming the attention back again and again. Resting on the platform of present time experience. And we can observe the trains of thought or sound, just passing through. Relax, observe, allow. again and again. Just recognizing if the attention has wandered off, perhaps left the platform of the present moment and jumped on a train. Sometimes a train of self, thought, memory. To recognize that's happened, just acknowledging. And then with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back again and again. Relax, observe, allow. A simple reflection. What is in your mind right now? What qualities? Clarity, ease, acceptance, agitation, frustration, wanting. And did we know before I asked the question? Just take a moment to reflect. Settling back in to this present time experience, including the mind. Relax, observe, allow. The moods, reactive formations. Is there craving? Is there aversion in the mind? Is there ease? Is there peace in the mind? Just silent reflection. All right. So I think what I'm going to do is just open up right now. And if there anyone that wants to reflect on that experience, reflect on the, wait, let me try to get my screen in the right, the right way. There we go. So you can, raise your hand, just reflect or even question the instruction there. Or anything that came up during that time. Before I talk a little bit more about the topic. Yeah.
What came up is, how do you get off the wheel of the competition?
So I'll just repeat for the people at home. The question is kind of, how do you get off the wheel of competition?
Yes, competition. I notice I'm competitive.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Even I love chess. I play chess.
Mm-hmm. So he plays chess. He's very competitive.
And I notice I hate to lose, and then whenever I do lose, I feel better when I lose.
Interesting. Okay, so he recognizes that he hates to lose, but then when he does lose, he feels better about yourself. Or I mean, maybe in some ways I don't really have an answer for you. It's something I would say to watch, just like in the instruction, to kind of watch the mind, to watch the tendency towards wanting to compete. In some ways, competition can be skillful. Wanting to be, better than the last moment, or and when I say better, I mean, maybe, I don't know, more progressed or more understanding or more clarity. And there's some greed. There could be some greed attached to, like, I want to win. I'm right. I want to be right. It's like a view. I want to be better than the other, which is a bit of a separation, And I mean, I think it's part of our human nature. I mean, the Buddha in the Dharma, the word is mana, and mana means conceit. So it means like conceit, I am. That's one of the ways it's described. Another way it's described is just comparing mind, better than, less than, equal to, but all in relationship to kind of the I am, the kind of a little bit of self-centered, you know, that's why we suffer, because we're self-centered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's another way of kind of saying the ego grasping to whatever the competitiveness is about. So yeah, I would say, the same thing applies, just watching that with your mind, watching that with your practice, present time experience as it comes up, and not judge it, and not, not beat up on it, not, it's another aspect of the mind's tendency, and we can learn from. That's where, when we point mindfulness towards the mind itself and its tendencies, that's really where we're going to find out what's going on here. Because so often we're just kind of, instinctually uh, gratifying our desires or cravings or all that jazz. So thanks for that. I see Kevin, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hey, man, thanks for the meditation.
Sure, man. What's going on?
Good to be here. I just have this question that's been, I don't know if you can answer it, but I was just wondering who we are if we're not ourselves, and that like we kind of define ourselves as our memories, and like who are we without our mind, like Alzheimer's people, like lose
Right.
their minds, like, and then we die, and do we like take like a memory drive or something like with us, DNA or something?
Well, they're sure coming up with some new shows about that, right? Like there's this new show called Upload, right? Where you upload our consciousness into, I don't know, the cloud or something. I think it's a great question, Kevin. I think it's an age-old question. I think since before the time of the Buddha, since as long as we've developed this kind of upper part of the brain that can look back at the other parts of the brain and go, what the fuck's going on here? I think ever since that time, that question has probably been posed. And just for those of you in the room, the question, if you didn't hear, the question was kind of like this kind of who are we? And this maybe goes back to one of the, some of the teachings, or one of the themes I come back to, which is if we're not our thoughts, we're not our feelings, right? So this idea of kind of disidentifying with our thoughts as who we are, and our feelings or emotions as who we are. And then so the question, then who are we? I mean, I think there's multiple ways to answer that question, because we are who we are. Like there is a self. It's just not as big of a deal as we think it is. And like we are, on some level, our conditioning. We are our thoughts. We are our experiences, our personality, and we're so much more than that. So we're not just limited to that, So the other day, and maybe in the past, so I was talking about the 5 aggregates, which are the Buddha's explanation to this kind of concept of not self, which I actually will kind of unpack in the future. I'm not going to necessarily unpack it right now. I think every teaching of the Buddha is about kind of loosening the knots of our identification. Yeah. So I don't know if that was helpful. I mean, one of the things, it's like one of the ways in which I can't help it. It's such a juicy question, right? I want to like kind of dive into it a little bit more. Well, one of the ways that the Buddha describes is like this life is nothing more than a flame-like process. And a flame, when you look at a flame burning, it seems somewhat solid, even though it might move with the wind or with the atmosphere. But it seems like, okay, we can recognize a flame even though it's moving. But in reality, a flame is tiny little pieces of energy kind of arising and passing, arising and passing, arising and passing. And in some ways, our thoughts are that way, our minds are that way, our breath is like that, our life is like that. So what are we calling a self if it's constantly changing? So just to reflect a little bit on that, it's a great question, Kevin. I'm glad you asked it. And we get, we're so locked in for, like I said, I think ever since we developed the higher brain functions, I think that question has been posed. And so I will come back to it another time in a little bit more detail. So, and also, of course, like explore for yourself, even just using this, who am I, as a reflection during meditation. Did anything come up during, just to ask you, Kevin, did anything come up during this particular sit that brought that up?
Just asked the question a couple of times to different people, and
I see.
my mother-in-law told me she'd get back to me, and I don't know. I was just thinking, like, Alzheimer's, like, how deep does it go? Do you forget like what a tree is and how, like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what happens when Alzheimer's kicks in? What parts do we lose of memory or personality? It's a great question. And then, does that define who we are? Thanks for asking. Okay, Henry, want to unmute yourself?
Terrific. Thank you so much, Jason. It's really a great opportunity to visit with you today and with everybody. It's great to see everyone out. I'm in recovery, and I've been in the process of really doing a lot of a disciplined gratitude practice, and that has opened up a couple of different questions for me, and I was hoping maybe you might connect some of the dots. Most likely, as I've come to know, and I'm probably overthinking it. So, when I look at the intention, putting the intention towards something that I desire, a healthier outcome, a new point of view, a new perspective that's beneficial to me. I get a little bit tripped up with the whole idea, though, of also of how to balance off not being desirous or seeking pursuing things that I find desirable, right? So there's I know there's two different, I guess, levels of intention. And I just wonder if you could help me unpack that a little bit, because I'm getting a little bit of conflicting information. And it's like about pursuing something that I desire versus doing the next right thing. Does that make sense? Am I explaining it correctly?
Yeah, I feel like I understand. Although I may not understand, but we'll see. I want to just say, because this has happened twice now. So if you ask 100 people one question, you're going to get 100 different answers, right? Because we all have our own filter, we all have our own practice, we all have our own experience. And even though from the Buddhist perspective, there is a known and predictable course, there are threads that are all kind of entwined together to kind of understand. There's a roadmap, there's a path, there's these the eightfold path, there's the the noble truths, there's the 3 of these and the 10 of those and the 5 of these, but we all have our own experience of what those teachings mean to us. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there. And it's okay. I think it's all right to be curious and to even be skeptical and to, question, like, there's nothing wrong. I mean, I think that's beautiful. It's one of the things that I've always loved about this practice. So let me get a little bit of clarity. So desire, first of all, there's a little bit of a misnomer there. This idea that desire is a problem.
Hmm.
Were you kind of alluding to that a little bit?
I think what's happening is that and this is through my recovery journey, kind of enmeshed desire and craving, perhaps.
Yeah, right.
And I trying to, I guess it's the old adage, it's doing the right things for the wrong reasons. It's like the inverse of that too. Is like I'm trying, to make decisions and to put intention into my thoughts, my words, and my actions that are designed in way for an outcome that helps me lift myself up, to help me be better.
Okay. Yeah. So it's getting a little convoluted. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. I wanted to kind of get clarity on what you mean by desire, because from the Buddhist perspective, desire isn't actually a problem, but it really is the craving. And actually, I spoke on Monday specifically about this kind of first noble truth, which is really looking at that there is suffering and what's the cause of that suffering, but it's craving. What's the cause of addiction? Craving. It's not actually, you know what? Alcohol isn't actually a problem. Weird. Heroin maybe actually not be a problem. Sex, food, shopping, pursuit of happiness, not a problem. Craving to it could be a problem. The repetitive craving and the attachment could be a problem.
Okay.
Is a problem, cause of suffering. So just to say, from the Buddhist perspective, desire, there is what's called skillful or wholesome desire, and then there's what's called unskillful or unwholesome desire. And in the Buddhist kind of teaching, that one of the first insights is to kind of see you applying what I was applying in this meditation tonight around turning the attention, kind of keeping one eye after we, settle the mind and do some concentration practice, and, really kind of learn to kind of settle the discursive mind. We can begin to turn the attention toward the mind to see what's actually going on there. And that's where we're going to begin to kind of, discern the difference between, okay, is this a skillful thought pattern, or is this an unskillful thought pattern is it leading to entanglement in the mind, or is it leading to freedom in the mind? And by mind, I also mean heart and life, right? So we can begin to kind of discern that over time. And so this idea of the next right thing, like I love that. I think it's I've lived by this kind of term of the next right thing, and I think that that's very kind of mindfulness oriented. Actually, what's the next right thing? What's my intention in doing the next right thing? And to discern, is my next right thing to be a greedy bastard, or is my next right thing to be kind or compassionate, or what I mean? And I think it's like a spot check inventory, right? We need to kind of check in about that. And so I think that's about all that I want to say about that for now. Hopefully it was a helpful kind of like a helpful description.
Yeah, it was very helpful to help me clarify the skilled versus unskilled. So
that's where we have intention and volition too. We have volitional action in that time. So thank you. Okay, you guys, I'm gonna shift now and talk a little bit about the topic. And then we'll open back up for some other kind of questions. And the topic, just moving along the Satipatthana Sutta, is this fourth foundation of mindfulness. And then what's great for us as teachers is that the fourth foundation of mindfulness is we can just, kind of really talk about kind of whatever we want. But there is a bit of a known and predictable course, and I've been talking about the hindrances for a period of time. And but I want to talk about the 7 factors of awakening. Sometimes they're called the enlightening factors or the enlightenment factors. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and utilizing the framework that we started with in the beginning during the meditation, this kind of idea of like, what's in your mind right now? Like, can we utilize that? And because it's in the mind that suffering happens and release happens. It's in the mind that either this kind of grasping, sometimes it's physical, but mostly it's still going to be motivated by the mind itself. So by being able to kind of, and keep one eye on the mind as well as the breath and the body, this can be really a useful skill. And it's what I think a lot of was kind of trying to point back to during the Q&A just a few minutes ago. Because when we can learn to kind of shape the mind or, sharpen the mind's attention, the attentive, mindful quality. In other words, it's kind of like, sometimes I talk about the ocean, right? It's like if you go out in the ocean and it's, it's super rough. It's like, it's windy and it's blown out and there's a lot of turbulence on the surface. But then like I scuba dive, and one of the things that happens is that when you go beneath the water, like when you submerge yourself a little bit of depth, it becomes quiet and still and deeper still, quiet. And within that kind of, so the two things can be happening at the same time. But if we're allowing ourselves through this practice, through breath, body, concentration, feeling tone, we're allowing ourselves to kind of have some quietude, then we can gain this insight and also then begin to kind of reshape our attention to the mind. Of course, by mind, I mean what we call heart mind. In Thailand and in Burma, the way it's described is the heart is the seat of the mind. Chitta, the word chitta means it's like heart mind, but it also means the heart is the seat of the mind. So where the mind sits. So when we're doing heart practice, we're actually doing mind practice as well. They're interconnected. When we're doing body-centered practice, we're doing mind and heart practice as well. So it's all kind of connected. I think it's important, that to recognize that we have the power to shape our minds. There's this kind of there's this teaching I remember that from the Buddha, and it says, the way in which we incline the mind, to that the mind will bend, right, and grow. So this idea that if we incline the mind towards negativity or towards like fantasy or craving, then the mind will grow that way. It will lean. It's kind of like if there was some reference to bamboo. It's something like the way that the sun is the way that the bamboo will start to kind of bend. And that if we're constantly trying to do that, same thing maybe with bonsai, you can kind of shape it to be a particular way by kind of nudging, but with an intention, same thing with the mind. So over time, we can understand this process. And there's a teacher from Thailand, from the south of Thailand, named Ajahn Jumian. And Ajahn Jumian is this kind of big, portly, like not very common for a Thai person, been a monk for a very long time, very portly, man, and he would wear. They have a lot of these beliefs in Thailand around like kind of medallions and amulets, and he would have this huge belt of all these amulets that people would have given him and blessed and whatnot. Anyway, and he had a really jolly laugh. But anyway, to this point that Ajahn Jimian says that he hasn't had anger for 25 years in his mind, like as like watching it. So the Buddha was clear that these are the most useful two lists, the hindrances, which we've been talking about, and the factors of awakening. So the idea is that what we want to do is starve the hindrances, right? And feed the factors. And so, there's this story of the two wolves. It's a kind of a Native American story. It gets used a lot, but this idea of, that we have these two wolves or these two minds within us. And sometimes I kind of think about it as heart-mind. There's these two kind of wolves, and sometimes the wolf of the hindrances, we're feeding, and they get stronger. The wolf or the mind of anger or resentment or aversion or sloth or greed, doubt. And then there's the mind of what we could call the factors, and there's a few of them: mindfulness, investigation, energy, what's called kind of rapture, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. So these are the factors. I'm going to talk about the factors a little bit more and just kind of suss them out and break them down. So the idea is we want to feed these qualities. So the qualities of mindfulness and investigation and energy. And these are actually, okay, so one of the ways that it's helped me to kind of see the factors is like a not a bouncing beam, but like a teeter-totter. We're in the center of the teeter-totter. We're talking about cultivating emotional balance or cultivating a balance of heart-mind. Then one of the things that we're really talking about doing is that at the center of that is mindfulness. That mindfulness helps us to balance. It's the foundation of this quality to kind of balance. And then the 7 factors are actually kind of broken down into 2 pieces, 2 sections. There are arousing factors, and there are relaxation, or sometimes people call it subduing factors. And now I want to just kind of break this, talk about this in a different way for a second. So what we're talking about, 7 factors of awakening, is what happens to us when we're meditating, and what happens to us when we're able to sustain. So kind of like when we're able to get some depth and get away from the discursive mind or stop feeding the hindrances. What happens? Well, there's kind of a known and predictable course. And the kind of balance of this teeter-totter is like talking about, when do we need to use the arising factors? When do we need to use the relaxing or calming factors? And to find this kind of balance to help sustain us to awakening, right? And what does awakening mean? Well, insight, I think, freedom from suffering, liberation of kind of heart, mind. All right, so what are the arousing factors? Well, investigation. And if you think about like doing a body scan, or even like I mean, what I tend to do is see that there's something like in the well, even like the question I asked, posing the question, what's happening in the mind right now? This is an investigative quality, and it tends to be kind of arousing. And one of the things, if we're feeling kind of sleepy, we can use investigation as a way to kind of arouse the mind, get curious about what's happening in our experience. So this is kind of a way to counteract sleepiness or the sluggishness of mind, sloth and torpor. Were you here, Brian, when I was talking about the sloth and torpor? You would ask that question about how one is mental and one is physical.
Yeah.
I appreciated that question because it got me thinking, yeah, what is the difference? Okay, so investigation, arousing factors, energy, right? Energy is this also talked about as effort sometimes, like increased effort, kind of fine-tuning our, pinpointing our energy can help it's an arousing factor. And then it's interesting because there's talk of concentration as being a relaxing factor, yet sometimes it feels like concentration is this kind of bearing down, but really investigation and energy together are a little bit of that motion, which then leads to concentration. And when we can learn to concentrate the mind, like really being focused on one point and sustainable, we can actually remove the hindrances from our experience. And that for me is not just theoretical. Like I've learned to do that. Of course, when you stop meditating or when that shifts, all those hindrances come rushing back in. But it can happen for a time. Focusing on the body, concentration, sweeping through the body with your awareness, mantra or what we call repeated phrase, like loving kindness phrases, also really useful. Breath, just this kind of pinpointing the breath, attention, really super useful for concentration. And this can lead to some of these other factors of rapture, what we call rapture. These are just experiences that can be felt in the mind, felt in the body during sustained meditation practice. And it's considered kind of the path. These 7 factors are things that are going to arise as we're working on balancing the heart-mind and seeing clearly. So rapture is kind of just what it sounds like. And it can be pleasant. It also can be really uncomfortable. If you think about like being super excited and then like there's like waves of kind of excitement, where it almost kind of hurts in the body. That's kind of what rapture can be like. Tranquility is the other side of that, where there can be the peace and ease I talk about a lot. And so again, these are enlightening factors. And so it might be something like, rapture occurs and then there's some destabilization. So we have to focus back on mindfulness and then utilize some investigation or some energy that will then stabilize the mind again. And then maybe we'll move into some tranquility, and then maybe we'll move into some deeper state of concentration, which will then be another kind of stabilizing factor, which will then move into something like equanimity. What is equanimity? But really what I call kind of, balance. Oh, there was in this book by Ajahn Mun, or written about Ajahn Mun. Ajahn Mun was Ajahn Chah's teacher. Ajahn Chah was Ajahn Amaro, Jack Kornfield, many other, Ajahn Pasano. Ajahn Sumedho's teacher. So this kind of great master, like kind of late 1800s, early 1900s. It'd have to have been early to mid 1900s. So anyway, he talked about, he didn't talk about, but the person that wrote his autobiography talked about that Ajahn Mun could levitate. And I remember when I first learned about meditation, I was like, I remember hearing about levitation, and I kind of wanted to levitate. Like I was like, I want to levitate. I want to learn to levitate, and I want to learn to read people's mind. Like those were the two that were like the spiritual powers that I kind of heard about. Neither of which I've been able to do, but doggone it, I'm going to keep trying. Anyway, that in the Ajahn Mun biography, it talks about rapture being related to levitation. So I think that can be kind of a useful thing. And then, so just, it's really so much of this is like strong determination, confidence, moving through these experiences that are happening in the mind. And at some point, just to get back to kind of Kevin's question, at some point, there can be an experiential awareness of what we can call anatta, or not self, where we can begin to experience that there is a dissolving of, perhaps it's egoic. I mean, there's the different ways of even talking about ego. There's an ego that's supporting supporting ourselves, what we call ego strength, which is something like self-worth. And then there's the ego that imposes this kind of, like what we was talking about earlier, this competition of I'm right, you're wrong, I'm big, you're little, I'm smart, or I'm strong, you're weak, any of that kind of comparison that takes place. That really is not super helpful. I think we're kind of noticing that in understanding, about racism and around, nationalism, and even just like political parties. There's just so many ways in which we can kind of separate ourselves by this kind of I'm right, you're wrong, I'm big, you're little, I'm rich, you're poor, I'm white, you're not, whatever the kind of way of separation is. So it's important, I think, to kind of see these things. So so stabilizing factors and arousing factors, using mindfulness as the key. All right. Opening up to questions, comments, whatever you guys got in the room or beyond. This is the awkward part where if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to fast forward. Okay. Anyone want to share their thoughts about what's been explained, what's been kind of talked about? All right. You can, if you're shy.
I'll ask
Hi. Okay.
Hi,
Hi.
it's Tanya. Hi. I've asked this question before, but like it's continuing to be like an issue for me lately. I feel so much anger right now, and I know it's affecting like the way I talk to people and the way I deal with my kids and everything. And I think that like as I started meditating more frequently and with this, you got this Sangha and on the Zoom and so forth, I found myself setting stronger boundaries with people that I probably should have set those boundaries years ago. But I don't feel like I'm doing it in a graceful way at all. And was wondering what is the best practice for sort of, or what meditation or practice to sort of learn to deal with the anger when that anger is justified.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would you recommend? What would you recommend to try to learn to deal with the anger in a more healthy way? Because I think it revolves a lot around not just like my family that I've had to sort of set boundaries, but it's this era now of such injustice that we're looking at, and it's like every day it feels like there's something else, and so every day I just become shocked, like the Latina that was in the military that passed away, like all these things, it just keeps adding on, adding on, adding on. And I don't want to be this person who is short or curt or angry or mad, even though justifiably, like, yes, it's a very unfair and angry situation. What do you recommend that would be the smartest place to start?
Well, first of all, just thanks for saying that. Thanks for sharing that. And you kind of you leaned a little bit into it by saying like healthy anger. Anger is healthy. It can be healthy. It also can be extremely destructive. And you probably know that. You probably have felt where, yeah, this is appropriate. It's appropriate for me to say no to this person or to set a boundary. It's appropriate to be outraged when you see, a cop, killing, that one of, it's interesting, right? Hundreds of those kinds of videos were out for years, but then somehow this was the motivating factor, which isn't a bad thing, but too bad it didn't happen years ago. So healthy anger, I mean, so the Buddhist answer is anger is something that we can hold on to. We can like intimately know without allowing it to spill out into causing harm to other people. And that means that we have to not avoid it, not deny it. But then also be aware of using the 5 precepts. So using the precepts of wise speech, so we don't just like kind of speak. And I mean, like I'm pretty aware of what it's like to have unhealthy anger and explode out. And I don't do that as much anymore. There's still like twinges of resentful anger. And I feel like I want to explode sometimes, but I don't. That's part of the renunciation of what's unskillful for me. So turning toward, okay, what is healthy anger? And then just allowing yourself to be angry is okay. And so not repressing it all the time. I think sometimes that's where the explosion stuff comes from. If we're repressing it, I think that's true maybe for any emotion when we start to feel, okay, this isn't okay. But I started to say the Buddhist answer is metta. And is, may I be, content, or may I be happy. May I be at ease, may I be free from suffering. And then even extending out to those people that you fucking hate because they're bastards. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. may you be free from suffering. And then the anger will come up. No, never mind. Fuck that. I don't, and then may you be happy. May you be peaceful. One of my favorite, it's a little bit, I don't know, and I'll just say it and then you can decide for yourselves. But there's a Tibetan phrase that's like a prayer. It's like a wish. It's like the same thing of metta. It's like, may you have the appropriate amount of suffering. May you have the appropriate amount of suffering so that you can wake up to the truth of your own suffering and how we cause our own suffering. And there's another phrase. So I'm, kind of putting a few phrases out because this is one of the ways that kind of soothes the mind heart during times of agitation. May I be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May you be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. This is more of a compassion response. But I like it. May this suffering be a doorway to freedom. So these are phrases that we can use, like I was talking about, that which we incline the mind will bend. And so if we're like, hate, fuck, I hate all them, and this sucks, and, pretty much the first, 25 years of my life, then that's what gets created. And those grooves, as maybe for some of you, those grooves are pretty strong still in my mind after 2 decades of meditation, and yet I can see them now. I have a little bit more space so I don't just get overwhelmed with the anger, but I can actually say, oh, this is anger, and not I am angry, but this is anger. And sometimes, what is anger? But anger can be a motivation to move, to protest, to speak out, to say that's bullshit, I remember years ago, I'm sure you guys have all seen it. Like, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention, that bumper sticker, right? And I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. That's why I'm outraged, because I am paying attention, and I've been outraged during this whole process too. And then, different, and then feeling overwhelmed and compassionate. And so finding the balance that there's no wrong way. And even when we blow it and, yell at your kids or spill out some of our suffering onto somebody else, then we can have some compassion there. Oh yeah, I'm just a learner in this life. And ask for some forgiveness. This has been my experience, some humility to be like, yeah, I'm not perfect. So those are my thoughts. I don't know. Ward, one of our teachers, is here. Do you have any thoughts, Ward? Do you want to jump in? You can or not. It's up to you.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. Thank you, Jason. That was fantastic. I think a lot about anger these days as well. I don't want to answer a question out of turn, but it's definitely been on my mind a lot. And the anger outrage thing, and the justifiable anger, like, that's a sticky fucking wicket for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, this is one of those things where you ask the same question and get 100 answers. You didn't even ask me, but you're going to get this answer.
No, I was asking if you wanted to share your two cents
about that.
Yeah, about whatever you want, but that
So, well, this is what's on. Yeah, I have some thoughts about this. So, to me, the anger is this, as you were saying, kind of oftentimes healthy, initially very healthy response. I think of it as like an alarm system that lets us know that we've been violated in some way. It's a call to action to police our perimeter, kind of. And if we go and police the perimeter and say, yo, you're standing in my fucking rose bushes. Can you back up 4 feet? I worked very hard on those things. And then we have behaved according to the feeling. It's asking us to go and deal with the issue. But I think then there's also this piece of outrage, which in my experience is when I'm starting to contribute to the problem by buying my own story about what this thing means, and what it means about me, and what it means about the world, that this could be happening to me, and what is it, and I really start personalizing it. And that's, for me, that's where the very unskillful part starts to take over. There's not a lot of extra benefit in the way that I look at it to the outrage piece. It's just a lot of fire. And I've already got the call to action. But the outrage piece for me is just like, oftentimes it's when I look back into the past and I see like, how can this possibly be? And usually when it's something that I have been involved in, I'm pretending as though my part didn't matter. Mm-hmm. I'm sort of abdicating my own responsibility and like looking only at the other person. And that would be kind of the metta piece, right? I'm coming from a place of judgment and removing compassion. Like, I would never do something so incredibly unskillful as this person has done. And look, I haven't killed anybody. So on a certain level, that's true for some of these super upsetting things that are happening. But the outrage piece is an invitation for me to investigate what am I contributing, which then allows me to maybe not do that anymore, because I'm not very skillful if I'm outraged. I'm not going to have a great, relaxed, engaged response to what's going on. I'm going to freak out and do something weird and bothersome and hurt, right? And keep the pain going, probably.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks for that. Yeah. You just made me think of, so this whole mask wearing thing, it's a great place to practice, because I hear people, walking down, I'm like, I'm not wearing a mask now. Even just kind of like, there's it's this whole thing, and it's even gotten politicized, but there's this whole thing about, like, for me personally, do I get angry when I'm seeing somebody else not wearing a mask, or seeing other people's reaction? And what I've been doing is, I'm either, because it's compassionate, I will wear a mask when I'm out or I'm around people, definitely if I'm going to be within 6 feet of somebody. But to notice that, see the outrage, maybe justifiable to them, maybe not justifiable to them, but just to use that little thing about, like, okay, what's going on with this mask thing? Some people believe masks are bullshit and actually not helpful. Other people believe, like, you should be wearing a mask while you're sleeping. You know what I mean? Like, there's these polarizations that are taking place hugely in this country, like specifically in this country. And like, how do we hold that? And what side of the polarization are we on? So it's back to, are we using arousing factors? Is anger an arousing factor? Or are we using kind of relaxing factors of kind of concentration or calm, reflection, mindfulness? So thanks for your thoughtful and really relevant question. I hope it was helpful and it wasn't just a bunch of information, bunch of gibberish. I mean, not Ward, but me, because. All right. So we are just about out of time. So I want to thank you guys for your participation. And let's just take a moment and kind of gather up all the goodness of our practice, the showing up, the being a part of this Sangha, the staying, intimate with our suffering so that we can find a way out. If we can't see the fucking door, we can't get out. This practice helps us to see the door. So taking in all the goodness of that, and then extending out in all directions, like, even just this wish, like, may all beings have the appropriate amount of suffering, that they may wake up to the truth and come to the end of suffering for themselves and for all beings. May we all be free. Even you, even me.